with everybody else.
Okay.
Okay, it's just about to go to live stream. And it's on live stream at the moment. So this is the things that happen before we kick off with the House of PMOs and PMO, hot PMOs, monthly PMO HotHouse. You see, because everybody else is still waiting in the waiting room. So we're just about to bring them in and we're going to start recording. But yeah, lovely to see you if you're watching us on LinkedIn. Hello. And yeah, bring people in and we're going to get kicked off yeah, right now, I think. Yeah, should we bring people in? Yeah, okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. Hello. Hi everyone. It's the last Friday in the month, which is fantastic, you know, but it's Friday's near the weekend. It's time for PMO HotHouse. Should we get going?
Absolutely.
And whoosh indeed. And welcome to the October version of PMO HotHouse. If you're watching us on live stream, hello, hi. If you've got any comments while you're watching on live stream, please do tap them in because we'll be keeping an eye on those as well. And it's, of course, it's a certain day that I think many of us, you know, probably are maybe having patches or maybe just completely ignoring this. But it is Halloween and it's time for PMO HotHouse. I hope you're all well. As you know, we like to get into chats on PMO HotHouse because it is about the community and what we're doing and what everybody else is doing and commenting on what's happening and basically just finding out all about PMO right now and what's been going on and what's coming up. So we've got quite a packed show for you, and it's just John and I in the chair this month. Eileen sends her apologies, but let's get going. Let's start with the first bit, which we all know and love, yeah. It is a news section. Hello, John. How are you? Are you okay?
I am absolutely wonderful. I'm all Halloweened up. I'm here with my able-bodied assistant that I think we can kind of see there when it kind of blurs in and out. So I'm assisted today by a skeleton. I've got my pumpkin and I've got my spooky spider there. So we are ready for today. And if that's not enough guests on today, we've got another guest for you later on, which I'm looking forward to a discussion with. Right, on to the news then. It's a regular news session. As ever, I go through all the project management news, all the reports, all the white papers, and try and get that, and the journals to try and get that done and filter that down to these sort of interesting nuggets that I can share with you, so you don't have to do all that reading yourselves. And the first one we've got is around maturity models. Who doesn't love a project management maturity model? So 37 models not good enough for you. This paper, Bridging the Maturity Gap, they've actually done some interesting analysis at the beginning. They claim to have found 37 different maturity models for project management. And the argument in there is that they primarily target organizations that have established practices around project management. And they're quite good for those organizations, but they're less good for people that are just starting out with project management. And looking across sort of 7 or 8 different domains of knowledge can be overwhelming and can confuse people and lead people to try and spread themselves too thinly when maybe they should be focused on 1 or 2 key things. So that's the argument in there. I've got to admit, this one led me down a crazy rabbit hole of then actually trying to look up some of these 37 models and critique them. It was an interesting journey because I found a few of them I'm pretty sure don't actually exist, and sort of have been picked up from various places. But it did give me an opportunity to dive into some old, some new ones, some that will be familiar to you, some less familiar. And I thought that maybe we could do a little quiz. So for those of you that are here in the Zoom room with us, I'll be asking you to pop your answers in chat and I'll share those with everyone as they come through, as we go through and play a game, which on the next slide called Name That Maturity Model, or NATM squared, as I've decided to call this segment, because everyone loves an acronym for a maturity model. Right, let's get warmed up then. So, by the way, if you are watching on LinkedIn or YouTube and you want to be in the sort of inner circle, if you go on to, for next time, if you go onto the House of PMO website and events and sign up there, you'll get the direct Zoom link, which means you'll be in chat with us. We can see exactly what you're saying, and where you hear me interacting with people on chat, you will be one of those people in the kind of inner circle there for next month. Okay, let's start with an easy one for you. So fingers on keyboards, please. If you can pop into chat what this one stands for, P3M3. Nice, easy one to start with, hopefully for you.
This fastest fingers first.
Mm-hmm.
Fastest bony fingers, evil, creepy fingers first. Okay, should we just quit with the Halloween stuff? No,
Absolutely not.
No. It's an interesting one, this, isn't it? P3M3, because there's so many, because it's like P30.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the people recognize that term P3M anyway. You know,
Yeah.
Or PP.
Oh, we've got Star Wars references coming in. Okay, there we go. I think yeah. So Sarah's got there. So project, program, and portfolio management maturity model. I've got it the other way round on mine, but yes, absolutely. So the P3 is the 3 levels: portfolio, program, and project there, and the M3 is the management maturity model, 3 M's there. So that's what that one is, which has this one's got sort of pillars. So it's got the portfolio, program management as columns or pillars there, and then the 7 domains along the bottom there through organizational management, risk, benefits, and so on and so forth. Okay, good start with that one. We've named that one with our group. We've got a group of experts on board. Let's see how we get on with the next one.
Yeah, this is going to get harder, I suspect.
It will get harder, I promise. We've got OPM3. We want to take a punt on this one.
Little ghostly man there, or ghostly person, should I say? Ghostly spirit, even.
So this is PMI's one. So 2003 for this model. It's quite an interesting one. They do so PMI do, I think they still do. They certainly did at the time a certification in OPM3, and people and organizations could be certified to go and assess maturity with the OPM3 model. They hit a bit of an issue in 2015. I think it was, maybe 2016, where basically they bought a company, EMI I think it was, who actually do maturity assessments and had their own model for it, and that got everyone a bit upset within PMI, and they ended up canning that, keeping OPM3. But OPM3 lost a lot of traction around that time through politics and various things, I think. So it's still around, but sort of nowhere near as big as it used to be. So we've got a few there. We've got an optimistic model from Shane, which I love. Who doesn't love an optimistic model? Organizational project model from Stuart. Organizational. Yeah, absolutely. It's organizational is the key word there, and the M's doing their thing. So the organizational project maturity model there, which is the one that PMI adopted, as we said, splitting things by portfolio, program, project, much as we have seen with the P3M3 model, and their sort of improvement stages there. So your maturity, as it were, goes from sort of standardizing things to start with measuring them, controlling them, moving to a sort of continuous improvement culture is the way they saw that maturity increasing. Okay, next one should be easy for you now. You get the hang of how these things are named. PMCMM, Pumcamum, 2001 model, this one from Voivodich and Jones.
It's just twigged, Richard, but it is.
Oh, Kasim had just said every model finishes 3, only to find me pop one up that doesn't end with a 3. Ah,
yeah, see,
got to keep you on your toes. Got to keep you on your toes.
I think.
I like Linda's thing. Just throw the words in the air and see which random order the letters end up in. So Shane's got project management capability maturity model. Gold star for Shane. Absolutely right. So I've tried to dive into some of these, and I've got to say I stopped reading on this one when I got to this point in their definition of it, where they describe the different levels as being worse or better than each other, because frankly, this is not how you should be thinking about your maturity models for PMO or project management. It's important that you are aligned with the organization that you're in, or potentially externally with the environment that you operate in. There is absolutely no point in you having a sort of level 5 at everything if your organizational maturity doesn't match that, because you're probably gold plating this area too much in comparison with the rest of the organization. An important thing is not chasing the higher levels in a maturity model. It's working out where you should be and working out how you get to the level that you should be at. Yes, always striving, but not so much so that you're pushing beyond the organization, because you're going to end up struggling at that point, I think, with alignment across things. So I'm not sure about this worse or better. The best place to be is where you need to be for your environment at a given point in time, I think. But yes, PMCMM there one. Let's dive on. ESPM, there you go, there's a 3 at the end there for you, Kasim. ESPM cubed.
Isn't that extra sensory perception? Are we getting into the realms of portal?
Ooh. Yes, spooky perception. Now this is a genuine one. It's an interesting one. So this is one from 2007. The S is software, to give you a little clue on that one. But this was sort of around that time. So if you think back, we were sort of not long after the sort of Agile Manifesto had been sort of defined in, was it 2001. They were looking at models for software project management. There was concerns in sort of some certainly sort of Africa, parts of Asia, some of the countries, that a lot of the maturity models that existed at the time were very, very Western centric, Western focused, and were maybe too big and bulky as well. So what this model is, well, like extra special. Now this was the evolutionary software project management maturity model. So that's our letters there for that one. And it was actually specifically, if you look through it, it was kind of designed with Mauritius very much in mind. So it was, we don't want one of these Western models that don't really quite align to how we work. Let's do one that is specifically for Mauritius, which is great for Mauritius, although it pains me to note that they didn't therefore call it ESPM4, because they could have added for Mauritius on the end of it. But there we go. Back to Kasim's point, they need to finish with a 3, I guess, so that's the rule. And this one kind of had a cone type model around it, which I thought the idea was that you end up with more depth on each of their measures, their KPAs on each level, which I thought made sense. Dive into more detail the more mature you get. However, it actually seems to add additional KPAs in each level. So I'm not sure the cone graphic quite worked on that one. And this one seems to have been sort of quietly forgotten over time. But nonetheless, ESPM3 with pretty cones and visuals and whizzing upwards there. And our last one here, Mince2, which made me chuckle.
Wow.
What have we got for Mince2, people? Another genuine one that we found.
That's not real, is it?
It is absolutely, absolutely real.
Okay.
Absolutely real. This is this was a Dutch sort of derived from the Netherlands. This one.
Okay.
We can probably, I guess most people here will be sitting there going, well, it's the controlled environments is probably the thing there where it's sort of like linked to Prince2. Too soon for mince pie, says somebody. Yeah, this one's the maturity increments in controlled environments. They make a big point in this of noting that they're focused on the whole organization. So where they actually say on their wiki that whilst with Prince2, the controlled environment is the project. They see the controlled environment as being the whole organization for when they're assessing things here. Now, unfortunately, the model is currently unavailable on Amazon, so I wasn't able to download this and have a read of it and tell you much about it. So I know what it stands for. I know it looks at the full organization. I know instead of using columns or pillars, they use towers. So they've got 6 towers for theirs. But that's as much as I know about it. So if anyone's got a copy of that, they fancy sending my way, I would love to have a read because I'm curious. But there you go, a few models there. There's a lot more in that paper there to dive into, but that was just some of the ones they were talking about there for you. And I've got to be honest, I did find some errors in the logic for that paper. There were some of the maturity models I don't think actually existed or weren't really maturity models when I dived into them. Their argument for the model that they've proposed is kind of undermined when you look at ESPM3, the one for Mauritius, which actually seems to have been doing exactly the same thing, coming up with something a lot simpler for organizations that aren't using the full sort of spectrum of areas there. There's also not much in there about how you actually apply it empirically. So nice idea, but kind of falls short of it. This next one here, though, was on a similar theme. So it's interesting. You see nothing on maturity models for a while, and then two papers come along at once. They're like buses they are. And this was looking at what drives maturity in organizations. This one's a big study. It's paper-based. It's a literature review, but they've gone through sort of 16,000 documents that they pulled in initially. They whittled that down to a screen list of 5,000. They went through those and actually picked 125 that looked like they were worth reviewing properly. And they've kind of whittled that down for them, got 44 of them that they've actually used in this document to try and define what success looks like. And essentially what they're saying is when you're looking at maturity for your project management in your organization, these are the dimensions that come up time and time again and seem to be the important ones for defining maturity for you. So it's the organizational lens on things, so the culture and structure of the organization, the project lens, so thinking about the governance, the planning and the models that you're using for project management. External factors, so the external regulation, the market that you're in, what the customer is expecting from you. The technology side of things, which is an interesting one. So the tools and the tools that you have, the integration, the tech savviness or digitalness of your people, and then the human side of it, which does cross over with the technology, or the competencies and collaboration you've got there. Now, these are the things that when they went through the literature review are the ones that actually they're pretty confident lead to better outcomes in project management. So executives for the organization, or executive backing being a crucial one that should come as no surprise to people here. Open climates and flexible structures over rigid models were key things that are correlated with successful project outcomes. In terms of the project side of things there, predictive models, which I'm hoping leads us into our later conversation about measuring things, reducing evidence, they reduce overruns. Process discipline is linked to better time cost efficiency on projects. There's for the external side of things, you've got construction firms that link to external regulation and guidance like ISO 9001 have demonstrably improved project results compared with those that don't. Tech side of things is kind of interesting because you've got PPM systems improving performance, but then crucially, when coupled with mature systems. So throwing in a brand new PPM tool is not going to give you that uptick that you need unless it's coupled with an existing mature system for project management in your organization. There's also a 2023 paper they reference where digital fluency turns tools into better decision making. So it's not just about having the tools, it's about aligning with a mature system, but also how technically fluent or sort of aware your teams are to be able to take what those tools are telling them and convert that into effective decision making. Again, I have a hunch that's going to link into our conversations later on. And then looking at the individual. Empowering project managers leads to continuous improvement rather than putting them in boxes where they don't think as much about the wider context. And a 2020 paper, PM capability and team collaboration really correlate strongly with project success and also organizational reputation. So we think about project management there, but it actually goes wider than that. And if you have strong PM capabilities and good team collaboration, it's not just linked with project success, but organizational reputation as well. So lots of insights there. But when you think about your maturity, make sure you're thinking about those 5 factors that seem to be the key message. If you're purely looking at process or purely looking at organization, you're not going to get a representative view of actually where you stand. That's a key takeaway on that one. Moving away from maturity, I'm all maturitied out now. Let's dive into our next one here. AI would not be every month now. There seems to be something about AI coming up. There were a couple of nuggets out of this one. This is a news article in Digital Construction today, but based on some research done by APM. I'll share the links to all of these afterwards in chat. What was interesting to note in this one is the increase in AI in project management in the construction space. In their surveys 2023, 6% of project managers thought AI would have a positive impact. That's jumped on the most recent survey to 62% of PMs saying that it will have a positive impact on construction projects. Being used a lot. They've got a couple of case studies there, one from Gleeds, one from Network Rail, on how they're using a little like more machine learning side of things, studies than sort of generative AI, certainly from the Network Rail side of things, although Gleeds is wider. But the cited benefits that they're looking at there: improved decision making, stronger risk management, and so on. You can read them on screen there. So that's sort of the areas where they're seeing benefits from AI in the project management space going forward. So it'll be interesting to see whether those numbers, the speed it's jumped from 6% of project managers, 62, says there's more and more people are using this and seeing and believing there is a benefit to AI in the future in project management. I think my last one, because I'd like to give you something useful to take away and maybe try. And I discovered this when I was going through government press releases. And this is it looks quite boring. It's a letter to somebody. They've updated the senior responsible owner letters that they give to senior responsible owners on projects. This one is about a boiler upgrade program, but I'll share the link to this one for you, because what this sets out is something that I think might be quite nice and interesting for some of you to maybe try out with sponsors or program managers within your own organizations, because it lays out nice and clearly in a very, very clear format. You are personally responsible for these things. This is who you're accountable for. This is what the time we expect you to be spending on the role of SRO, but you can see how that would apply to sponsors for projects as well. What the objectives and performance criteria are, the limits of your accountability, the structures you have to follow, and in terms of project status and transparency requirements, what needs reporting. But I will share the link to that because it's publicly available on the government website. It really, the structure is nice. It's really, really clear. And if you're not doing anything like this for your program managers or your sponsors for projects at the moment, maybe it's something you might want to experiment with when you onboard them as sponsors, to be really, really clear to them. This is what is expected of you, and this is the level of control we expect. This is your responsibilities, and this is where you're accountable for things. And it'll be interesting to see if people try that for the first time this year, to maybe let us know in a year's time whether they see that makes a difference in terms of the sponsors better understanding their roles. Quite a simple one to implement, but I think it could be one that would really help organizations going forward. There we go. Maturity models. We've discovered a load. We've added a new one. We've looked at what the factors are that really define maturity. We've looked at how AI, again, is driving forwards and forwards and forwards in the construction this time. And then there's a template for you to take away to see if it would work for you in terms of onboarding your senior responsible owners, program managers, and sponsors for projects. That's it from the news this week, this month. Back to you, Lindsay.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Just a couple of short and sweet ones for you here and now and about. We did 2 sessions, one in Manchester, one in Bristol. This is Bristol. We had Sam from Travel Lodge talking to us about how they have been redefining their PMO. Really interesting session, and most of the chitter-chatter about sponsors. Ghost sponsors, indeed. Have you ever heard the phrase? Very apt for today. Ghost sponsors, but they were talking basically about obviously sponsors that do get aligned with the letters, but then promptly disappear throughout the project, which got them talking about is there experience in the room where the sponsors have changed throughout the life cycle of the project. Again, it's something that can happen, should really happen actually, but again, people sharing their experiences about that. Talked about servant leadership. Again, these are all things that we've been doing, is in the library already. We've even got a piece around leadership in PMOs where we talked about servant leadership. on that specific one, it was around discussions on the workflow and value streams. So again, interesting discussions that it sparks in the room. We really like the term a list of priorities, but not a prioritized list. This seems to be one of Sam's mantras when he's talking to his senior execs about what they're trying to do in terms of the portfolio. And you can probably imagine with something like Travelodge, a lot of different types of projects that go on. But I think it's more to do with what was really interesting for the audience is just how quickly they turn around things. You know, you can literally buy a Travelodge type building from another provider, so like a Novotel, and then literally overnight it can become a Travelodge. You know, so it can be as quick turnaround as that. So the projects are quite interesting and throw up all sorts of you know, interesting nuggets that the PMO can get its hands around. And then we did also talk about how they've changed from that kind of control tower type PMO into something that's quite new that kind of fits that kind of entrepreneurial type of business, which is what Travelodge is. So it's been interesting thing about this. You finished your session, and then for another hour, people were just having a beer, having a chat, talking about some of the things that he'd thrown up in that session. It's going to be in the library, but I just want to reinforce that these sessions, you know, you really do get a lot of benefit if you can get out and about, because it comes in the conversations afterwards. Send them over into Manchester, something completely different. This is Louise Barker, and she was from Pennine Care, the NHS organisation up north. And again, really, really great session, and some stuff that comes out of this, stuff that I'm kind of knitting my points together as well. I'm hearing a lot of people that are working at that kind of project director, project manager, project leader role have come in from an ops management background. I keep hearing it all the time when they're talking about their previous experiences. Again, they talked about this is the NHS. I think we all know and you know, want to live it more. So we know what kind of things that they're up against. Interestingly, she said programs are not very much like programs are really liked within the NHS, projects not so much. And we're all like, what does that mean? And it's more to do with the fact that programs get a bigger spotlight on them, you know, that resources get given to them. It gets special focus, whereas the projects not so much. You know, it's a really interesting take on it. Again, this will be in the library next week. I really like the fact that they brought into their kind of life cycle as well in terms of delivery and change. They call it the triage stage, which I think, you know, why doesn't more businesses bring in some of their kind of, you know, operational stuff that they do and bring it into their project management method? But essentially the triage was a new stage that they brought in, which was called stage 0. But that was all about, you know, how do we get projects even to that first gate before it even becomes a business case? You know, so there's a lot of smaller types of pieces of work, which they have started to think about managing in a Deming model kind of way. You know, that plan, do, check, that one, keeping it really, really simple, certainly for people that are what they call occasional project managers. So people that may be clinicians or subject matter experts, but have been asked to deliver some kind of change. So they're using that kind of model. And again, that keeps up in a lot of the things that we've done before at House of PMO. And just finally, if you look at some of those pictures there, you can see that they're kind of modeling. They've created their own frameworks, and they've made sure that it looks beautiful. And that's because they've got some design skills in the PMO. Made me think and made a note. I wonder how many people within your PMO have a particular skill set that you don't know about it, that you could utilize in a way in the PMO that might make them, you know, for example, with this one, really great design skills. I wonder what skills are lurking in your PMO that you're not quite aware of. But yeah, so 2 sessions, and of course we've got more coming up in November. But yeah, it's great to get out and about and to learn from people's own case studies as well in the library next week. Okay, so before we just bring in our got a guest today, the guest chair, I just wanted to just let you know about something that we're trying. And if you remember, last year, we tried to do we did a sector focused event for people that were working in higher education. This time we're going for blue light, which is NHS, ambulance, fire, police, and also search and rescue. These are all about being able to focus on the sector, understand what's going on in terms of key challenges for the PMO. Can we learn from that and produce basically a report which not only will be available for other people within Blue Light, but I suspect, based on conversations so far, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out of this that will be applicable to any PMO in any type of environment. But it will be taking place for the first time. If you're not working in Blue Light, you can come along. There is a charity donation that you can make for that if you want to, if you think you're going to get something out of it. But it also means that we can get straight into a PMO flash mob where you're definitely invited. Anybody can attend that, which takes place straight afterwards. So that's the 19th of November. Okay, so we want to get on to the hot seat, and I'm really, really pleased to invite Alexander Buzia to us, our PMO HotHouse. Alexander, are you there? You there to join us?
I am here. Wonderful.
Hi. Hi. Lovely to have you with us. We essentially first, John did one of our news sections, which I know you've come on early and you managed to see John doing his sharing of news. And he shared a few months back now about the uniqueness trap, which was so really interesting. And then, of course, John's does his usual thing where he digs deeper, and to find out a little bit more about what's going on at Sade Business. So Alexander, you're a fellow at Sade Business School, which is part of University of Oxford, an authority on project management, risk and decision making. I know you do a lot of, apart from obviously teaching, doing a lot of research with Bent as well, around the whole kind of why projects fail, and we've been doing that for many years, and also obviously kind of academic, but also doing your work as well through Oxford Global Projects. But when we were chatting to you and trying to get you on the session, didn't realise that you literally got a book out right now, and isn't that a fantastic title?
I know. In store on the 3rd of November, so next week it should start. Ebooks, I think, might be available shortly thereafter, audiobook as well. So yeah, how to measure anything in project management.
Massive title. So let's
we got it too.
My copy arrived yesterday.
Oh, there you go.
Very good.
So tell us a little bit about the book. What's it? I mean, obviously, it's a great title. What is it about?
It's about measuring stuff, and sort of is my Doug Hubbard, one of the co-authors, right? He wrote this book on why risk management is broken, how to fix it, like a long time ago, and ever since the book came out, it has been on the reading list here at Oxford for all of our project management things, because it was a really good book. And then recently, maybe actually 2 years ago, I was chatting to Doug because we wanted to think about this in different ways on how we can make better decisions in projects. And we were particularly interested in, back then, it was a little project where we were looking at alternatives to benefit cost analysis, CBA, benefit to cost ratios, and those kind of things. And that started us to get talking about this. And so in the end, we wrote a wonderful little book about how to measure anything. And I also like that as a great little provocation, because one of the central things in project management is that we probably measure too much what is easy to measure, and not enough what is hard to measure, but actually way more important to know to make better decisions. So that's kind of our big mantra on, measure better, make better decisions, deliver better projects.
What for people that have not managed to have a look at it yet, in terms of like flicking through the table of content, what kind of things are we talking about? That the main things that do get measured and are focused in the book.
I know. So we were going through a lot of different things, and we kind of initially tried to start thinking about this and what do you measure before a project starts, when we're in planning and those kind of things. What do we measure during execution? What do we measure afterwards? So So that's kind of roughly sort of the shape of the book. And so there's a lot of things, obviously, sort of that we discuss in terms of, how do we, when we're in that planning stage, sort of measuring stuff before we start. It's a lot about forecasting and understanding the uncertainty around estimates and those kind of things and risk. And then in execution, I think one of the really interesting things is how we measure progress, because believe it or not, that's actually not a trivial subject, and there's lots of different approaches, and some work better than others. And then, of course, after the project, probably some of the hardest measures that are really, really important in terms of benefits, social value, those kind of impacts that, ideally you would better understand up front.
Yeah, I think when we were chatting before, I said to you, being a bit cheeky, but what about benefits management then? Because the number of people that have a real problem with the tangible stuff like, the costs and things where there are numbers, easy-ish. But what about the things like the intangibles? How have you, focused on that in the book? What kind of things can you share with us today?
Sort of in there, we use a simple framework. We call it COM, like in an internet address.com. So it's kind of what's the concept, what's the object, and how do you measure things? What's the measurement? So concept, object, measurement. And the important thing, I think, is, and that's sort of in the fundamental or the big idea in the book, is that shift that, measuring things is not about accuracy, but it is about a reduction in uncertainty around something that we might know or might guess. And that a reduction in uncertainty, that needs to matter. So that needs to make an actual impact or a change in a decision. So it needs to matter to something that's critical on the project. So that's kind of isn't sort of the starting point, right? So that's not about being with pinpoint accuracy, but recognizing that everything is uncertain. And if you spend time on measuring things, creating metrics and KPIs and stuff like that, then it is about reducing that range of uncertainty around these things. And then the second one, I think, sort of is the object of measurement. And when we very often, sort of where we do now a lot of kind of workshops and sort of talks now that the book is coming out, and we always ask people to bring the measurements that they find impossible to make, or a thing that is impossible to measure. And very often it's all around, isn't that actually what is really fundamentally lacking is the clarity of what that is. So, when we're saying, oh, benefits measurement is hard, or things like social value is hard to measure, right? It's hard mostly because we actually don't know what it is, and and that we want to measure, right? So and that's sort of is in the premise, and then we're going through some ways of how you can sort of get more clarity around that object, and then different ways of measuring that, so and modeling these things for decisions.
I'd love to know. I wonder if somebody's going to be cheeky enough to put something to say. And have you got like a real, something really difficult to measure? There's your chance. But what are you hoping, the reception will be for the book, and in terms of how this might help or change behaviors around project management? I mean, when you sit down to do a book like this, and certainly with the fact that you've been researching for many years about why projects fail, what are you hoping might happen in terms of reception to the project management industry about a book like this?
I mean, one of the things that we always work on is just making everything a bit more evidence-based and objective in projects. And so rather than relying on complete guesswork or wishful thinking, that we create a bit more discipline around sort of how we're developing our projects and how we're delivering our projects. And I think that will be my hope. And then also hoping that actually will shift the needle in terms of better project delivery. Yes, so I mean, that's the ultimate outcome, right? We're doing a lot of projects, and previously we quantified that, or colleagues quantified it, and we turned it then into value numbers. But, sort of the statistics show that about 40% of all hours worked in Western economies is spent in something that is organized with the title project. And so, I mean, there's a lot of time and effort that we globally spent on project management or project delivery, and then of course project management. So so there's also always great room for improving that.
Yeah. Do you see now? I mean, the thing that John's just shared there about the with AI. I mean, you would have been writing this book, over a period. How has that impacted what you were doing? And
I think one sec. And the most important thing, I think, is then, I mean, the book was interestingly a little bit delayed in its publication, and it got always more interesting because, like John just found out, right? Every single month there's something new about AI.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is, and that's what we started off also sort of asking earlier when you talked about maturity models, etc., is how do we know things work? So how do we actually measure that a maturity model has, an organizational impact? Or, we did a little survey, more than 100 respondents for the book, or nearly 200, looking into things like, if you have a PMP qualification or something similar, right? Does that actually make a difference? How do we know things work? And I think that's the most important thing, right? We need some measurements or metrics that we know and that things work. So, if we, at the moment, everybody is mostly experimenting with AI. Very few have really done that in terms of like a big enterprise-wide transformation where the business model changes, where it changes how we, consult or how we charge for the value that we're generating. And so, that's, but importantly, sort of when we're now in that kind of experimentation stages, and how do we know we're getting actual benefits from AI? And John, I like your thing, isn't that some people claim that they have found some benefits or have imagined some benefits so far. We probably actually need to see whether it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it just Zoe's just made a comment in chat, which I think we've often brought up. I think in the PMO stuff about making sure that the effort to make the measurement doesn't exceed the value that's gained from whatever. Yeah,
I think Zoe has a really great point, and one of the wonderful ideas in the book is that how to quantify that value. So because if measuring is about reducing the uncertainty of something. And then that leads to a better decision making. We show out a way on how to quantify this. This is known as the economic value of information. So measuring a thing as economic value, and so knowing what kind of decision we make, whether that is like a project turnaround or, awarding a certain contract or even investing in a project, there's some sort of material value there we can quantify, and then you can do a little calculation. We explain that also in the book about us, and sort of if we knew one thing absolutely accurately, what would be, so without any uncertainty, what would be the value of perfect information? And you can model that through, and then sort of there's a rule of thumb, whatever that economic value of perfect information is, you should probably spend no more than 10 to 20% on trying to measure that. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So it gives a really handy tool set to make that kind of, we say everything should be measured, everything should be quantified, we need to make objective decisions. So actually then saying, this will really make a difference, and so we can make an objective decision whether to measure something or not.
No, but I'm so disappointed that we're nearly out of time. But I know I've mentioned you. Wouldn't we like to see Alexander at the PMO conference in June next year? Because I think we should be exploring more of this. Because yes, exactly. It's 101 different questions, because it's not just about the book. You've done previous works, you've done research stuff. We've not been able to get onto a uniqueness chat, which we found really fascinating. There's a load of things that you're doing there, and that's coming out of the business school as well, and also with the work that you're doing with Bent as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for giving you your time today. It's precious, and it's half term, as you know.
That's all right, as you noticed. Yes, indeed. So highly recommended. And for John's next news segment, last night we published a new article on the very first project in the last 50 years in the nuclear sector that delivered so far 3 reactors on budget and ahead of schedule. So talking earlier about some of those interesting news on Hinkley Point and Sizewell C, etc., here in the UK. Yeah, it can be done, and we've analysed how.
Right.
And I leave that to John to cover next time.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for having me.
as we know, nuclear is far less risky than our IT projects. But I look forward to reading that. And for everyone on here, it's easy for Alexander to recommend his book and say it's wonderful, but I would absolutely echo it in the 24 hours I've had to sort of go through my copy of it. There's some great ideas in there. I've often talked about sort of leading versus lagging metrics. I've now got the discovery metrics versus decision-driven metrics, which is an interesting dimension on that one, which has given me a lot of thought about sort of the value of our metrics and how we sort of thinking about sort of creating this discovery and then actually checking whether they turned out to be decision making later on. Quite an interesting way of thinking about things. And the emphasis on front end loading, which is a really interesting sort of antithesis of the sort of agile start now thing, which people are coming around to. UK government seem to be adopting a lot more now. They're taking that advice slowly, but they are, which is fantastic. And there's a lot of stuff in there very clearly explaining how to do some of this measurement. So well worth reading. My prediction is if you get it, the first 3 chapters, you'll be there going, I absolutely agree with everything. As a PMO person, this is music to my ears. This gives me the way of articulating some of these things that you don't have otherwise. So that's well worth it. I think some of you maybe more of a struggle in the chapters after that as we get into the how, but certainly those first 3 chapters you're going to love. And then hopefully that gives you the sort of energy and drive to try and dive into how you can measure some of these things in your organizations as well. And I'd echo Lindsay's point. I would love to have a longer session at conferences.
Yes, I think so. So thank you very much, Alexander. We'll let you go. You're in demand.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. And thank you, John. Warm words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and just finally, before we leave you for today, we've got things coming up. As you know, there's lots. We've got some in-person stuff coming up in November. Really looking forward to those. But we have got an online session coming up next week, which is all around resource management. There's another one also we find really difficult. So I'm going to bring it to a close. Really great episode, I think. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next month. Remember, last Friday of the month. Make sure you get it in your diaries. Okay, all right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.